All right, let's finish these biology cards. Here we go. So it says, what makes what? First up, the anterior pituitary gland. The anterior pituitary makes HGH, LH, FSH, TSH, and prolactin. All right. Then the posterior pituitary gland makes what? Oxytocin and ADH, which ADH is your antidiuretic hormone right there. Okay, stored only here. It's actually produced in the hypothalamus. Need to remember that. The posterior pituitary is where these two hormones are stored, ADH and oxytocin, but the hypothalamus actually makes it or produces it. All right, hypothalamus. Let's see what you got here. X doesn't have anything on that one, so let's go to the next one. Adrenal cortex. The adrenal cortex, obviously the hypothalamus makes the ADH and the oxytocin. The adrenal cortex makes aldosterone and cortisol. Okay. The adrenal medulla instead will make epinephrine and norepinephrine. Adrenal medulla. Okay. And then maybe the one with med on it, medulla, you can think like a doctor would use an EpiPen or something to help you remember norepinephrine and epinephrine from the adrenal medulla. And then cortisol obviously goes with, and aldosterone can go together for the adrenal cortex. All right. What's the next one? Pancreatic alpha. Glucagon is made by those alpha cells, and the pancreatic beta cells will make the insulin. Fantastic. There we go. Chlorophyll facts. Well, what do we need to know about chlorophyll? It's similar to heme group in hemoglobin. It has magnesium in chlorophyll, and Fe, which is iron, is in hemoglobin. Great. The link between the nervous and endocrine system is the hypothalamus. Okay. It's the link between the nervous and endocrine systems. All right. Bacteria get energy from what? Glycolysis in the electron transport chain. Great. The sepal is what? The sepal encloses and protects the flower bud in angiosperms. Carotid arteries are what? Oh, drop the card. Okay. Carotid arteries supplies blood to the brain. Great. Integrins. Integrins, transmembrane receptors that act as bridges for cell-to-cell or cell-extracellular matrix interactions. Gastropoda. Gastropoda are snails. Transpiration. Transpiration is the loss of water by evaporation from leaves. In vitro fertilization. In vitro fertilization performed in a glass dish. Okay. Plasma cells produce antibodies. That's what plasma cells do. They produce antibodies. Random fact. Let's just learn here that bacteria utilize multiple electron transport chains, sometimes at the same time. That's neat. Ovarian follicle. Ovarian follicle creates the corpus luteum. Okay. Types of epithelial tissue. Well, you got cuboidal, you got columnar, and squamous. Chymotrypsin. Chymotrypsin is activated by enterokinase, becomes trypsin, made in pancreas. Fastest in aorta, slowest in capillaries. Great. Most diverse, numerous phylum. Arthropods. Phases: follicular phase, the egg matures, the ovulatory phase, the ovulation, and posterior or post-ovulation egg traveling through fallopian tubes. All right. Then we have a BBT temps at ovulation. Body temperature rises in ovulation. Ovarian follicle makes the corpus luteum. Luteal phase, the fertilization or degradation occurs. Okay. Fatty acid metabolic facts. The fatty acid metabolic facts state that beta oxidation of fatty acids occurs in matrix of mitochondria and forms acetyl-CoA. Synthesis occurs in cytosol. Golgi complex function. Golgi complex function modify proteins by adding a sulfate, carbohydrate, or lipid group to a side chain of certain amino acids. Episome. Episome is when a plasmid becomes incorporated into a chromosome. All right. True or false? Hemoglobin gives up more O2 under acidic conditions. That is true. Cyclic AMP is what? Cyclic AMP, second messenger. Monocotyledon and dicotyledon. Monocots are one cotyledon, parallel vascular bundles in leaves. Dicots, two cotyledons, net-like vascular bundles in leaves. X-ray crystallography. X-ray crystallography says the study of crystals or proteins and their structure by means of X-ray diffraction. GABA, the main inhibitory neurotransmitter in the brain. Blood-brain barrier. Blood-brain barrier, filtering mechanism of the capillaries that carry blood to the brain and spinal cord. O2, CO2, glucose, anesthetic is permeable. Amphoteric. Amphoteric means can act as an acid or base. Only optically inactive amino acid. That's glycine. Sporangia. Sporangia are sporangium, a receptacle in which asexual spores are formed, made by fungi, angiosperms, gymnosperms, and ferns. What are sori? Sori are clusters of sporangium. Beta and alpha glycosidic linkages. Well, alpha are on the same side, both up or both down, and beta are opposite sides. Great. Nerve gases, what do they do? Nerve gases inhibitors of acetylcholine esterase and cause death by respiration or respiratory paralysis. Blood pressure equation. So your BP, or your blood pressure, will be equal to your cardiac output divided by the radius of a blood vessel to the fourth power. The blood pressure will also be equal to the cardiac output times the peripheral vascular resistance. Acetylcholine esterase. What does it do? Acetylcholine esterase breaks down acetylcholine in postsynaptic motor and sensory neurons to terminate a signal transmission. Climax community. Climax community. The steady state of a community of plants, animals, and fungi. The pulse chase experiment. The pulse chase experiment, tracking proteins in a cell using radio labeling. Larynx, pharynx. Sorry, the larynx first is the voice box. The pharynx is the back of the throat. The bacteriophage is what? Bacteriophage is the virus that attacks bacteria. And then the last one, interferon. And interferon is going to be a protein released by animal cells, usually in response to the entry of a virus that inhibits virus replication. Carboxypeptidase. Carboxypeptidase is a protease enzyme that hydrolyzes a peptide bond at the carboxy terminal, C-terminal end of a protein. Aminopeptidase. Aminopeptidase, same as carboxypeptidase, but on the N-terminal. Peptide sequences written N-terminus to C-terminus. Amino acids added to the carbonyl end. What directs what? Western blot, southern blot, northern blot, fluorescence, correlation, spectroscopy. Let's see. Well, if you have a western blot, it directs proteins. Or detects proteins, sorry. It detects proteins. How about a southern blot? That will detect DNA sequences. And you got your northern blot. What does that detect? That detects RNA. Then you got the fluorescence, correlation, spectroscopy. Fluorescence, correlation, spectroscopy. Cell-to-cell communication. Phosphate buffer is going to be H2PO4 minus and HPO4 minus minus, so minus 2. Okay. Buffer inside cells, so that's inside cells with your phosphate buffer. Your bicarbonate buffer, however, is a buffer outside of cells. So that would be outside of cells in the body. Bicarbonate buffer is the HCO3 minus and H2CO3. Let's discuss the correct inspired air sequence. Okay, you got your nasal cavity to trachea to bronchus to bronchiole to alveoli. Bronchi too, I think, to bronchioles. Okay, bronchi comes before bronchioles. Then alveoli.
passive versus